Right then, welcome back. This is Business Center right here on Metropol TV. And earlier on, I had told you we are going to talk about sweet potato farming. And our question of the day is, where did sweet potatoes originate from? Where did sweet potatoes originate from? Send us your comments. We are live on Facebook at Metropol TV KE, and we'll read some of the comments as we go on with the show. Just send us your comments, tell us where you're watching us from, and we will sample your comments. But right now we are joined by Wangare. She is a YouTuber, and she's also a farmer of sweet potatoes. Wangare, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Kevin. How are you today?
I'm very fine. Welcome to the show, and we're just going to have this great conversation about sweet potato farming. And let's just begin with, what led you to be a sweet potato farmer, and how did you get into it, really? How has it been so far?
For me, sweet potato has been very ideal. I farm in Kajiado, which is very hot, and so I try to look for crops that are drought resistant, and they will offer cover crop for my soil because it gets very dry very fast. So for me, it's been lucrative because it's a tuber compared to over the ground kind of crop. So I've been happy. It's been a very good journey for me.
Okay, and how do you identify the soil? Now that you've said you farm in Kajiado, how do you identify the soil or the location that is best for sweet potato farming?
I like that question, and a lot of farmers ask, can tomatoes grow here? Can onions grow here? Can the ngwashes grow here? And my answer is always the same, because I am not just a YouTuber. I actually empower farmers to know that we are living in the tropics. If you remember geography when we were in school, there's something called the tropics. It means the upper hemisphere and the lower hemisphere, and we are right in the middle near the equator, which means we have very good temperatures for basically anything to grow. And that is why Africa and Kenya per se is positioned perfectly for farming of anything. We can adjust it, just tweak one or two things, but I believe anything can grow here in Kenya because we are in the tropics.
And on that point of us being in the tropics, once you plant a sweet potato seed, how long does it take to grow, and what do you really need as a farmer to ensure maximum yield?
Okay, so you need soft soil so that the tubers can be able to penetrate and elongate and push back. So if you have clay types, characteristic type of soil, you will find that the tubers are deformed or they have a funny shape because they were struggling to enlarge and become bigger. So it is always good, no matter what soil you have. Some have the advantage, like people in Nyahururu are doing loamy soils and red cotton soil. Those ones have the advantage, but people like us who are dealing with black cotton soil and clay soil, those ones you have to do the intention of making sure that your soil is always loose and always, keep weeding and keep making sure that there is enough air penetrating through the soil at all times.
And now, after growing and taking care of your plant, explain to us a bit about the harvesting process of sweet potatoes.
Yes, so sweet potatoes are pretty easy to harvest. You just need to pull out the leaves first, and then with your djembe, you go on the sides because you'll have made that bed, which is a raised bed, so that you can be able to know where the tubers are. Don't just grow it on flat land because of drainage as well. If you have an issue of a lot of rain like we are currently having, they will rot. So when harvesting, also follow that bed or that trench that you had made to make sure that you don't hurt any tubers, and you are able to dig them up and pull the rest with your hand to avoid damaging. And then also as well, leave some tubers behind for the next season. Yes.
And do we...
I should mention...
Just
Sorry.
continue.
Yes, on harvesting and post-harvesting care, tubers, especially sweet potatoes, get sweeter with time. So the longer you keep them in your storage room, the sweeter they get. If you find a blunt sweet potato, just keep it in your shelf for a few more days or a few more weeks, even months, and it will get sweeter.
Oh wow, that's really interesting. And how long does for example, you've harvested your sweet potato.
Yeah.
can you go ahead and maybe you've harvested this, we are in June, you've harvested in June. Can you
Yeah.
stay up to the next year in January and then you say you're going to eat it in January or a year after?
Yes, yes, definitely. As we say, it has good shelf life, and part of post-harvest care is keeping it in a dark room where it's not exposed to sunlight or moisture. Otherwise, it will start regrowing, and it will depend why you're preserving it. If it's for seeding back into the soil, then it's okay if it shoots. But if it's for preservation for eating, just keep it in. Imagine of your grandmother in the granary somewhere dark, or if it's in your house in a dark cabinet under the sink somewhere, it should survive for a few months.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And how do you know as a farmer that your product has been infested by pests and diseases? And what are the signs to look out for?
So the biggest challenge with gouaches is rodents and moles. They dig under there, and you're thinking, "Oh, my leaves are looking so good. Something must be happening under the ground." And then you find that someone has been nibbling on your product. So it's unfortunate. Most are advised to use traps because the moles are the biggest challenge. The other challenge is small insects that just bite and leave marks, which is not ideal for the market. So it's important to also use an ideal pesticide. For organic farmers, they are asked to mix garlic and chili and spray it on the crop to reduce on the pests. But on the small animals like moles and rodents, those ones we have to use traps as well.
All right, and now before we move on, we had talked about the harvesting of sweet potatoes. How long do you know that now the sweet potato is ready for harvesting? How long does it take? Does it take 3 months? Does it take 5 months? How long does it take?
About the fourth to fifth month, you should start seeing the leaves turn yellow and probably start to dry because there is a cycle. So that you plant the vines, you don't plant the tuber itself, you plant the vines, and then the vines will start becoming bigger and better, the stems becoming thicker and just basically colonizing your land. And then after that, you will see the cycle go into the dry season, the leaves turning yellow and eventually drying up, and then it's time for harvest.
Yeah, all right. And also on that, how do you know a tasteless sweet potato? And without peeling off the skin, how do you just know that this is going to be sweet or not?
Traditionally, that's a risky affair, but for us who have interacted with it, the one that is yellow on top inside, they tend to be sweeter, and then the white ones from Kisi, the ones that are whitish and creamish on top, those ones also tend to be sweeter. It is a gamble, I must admit, but nowadays we have a new variety from Calro, and I think other research institution where they're coming up with purple fleshed arrowroots and orange fleshed ones. I think we can see them in some posh places like Village Market. Those ones have higher carotene, so they're more beneficial to your body. So we can also look out for those varieties to plant.
All right, and the flat ones, the ones
Yeah.
that are flat. How do you tell? How do you tell? Because now you've told us the sweet ones. How do you tell
Yeah.
the sweet ones from the flat ones? The ones that are going
So
to be
they're yellow
flat.
in color inside. If it's red on top and white inside, there is a high chance that it won't be sweet. So that's how I know. And then also try and see if they look fresh from the farm, they have parts of soil still attached to them. They probably need a little bit of shelf life so that they can get sweeter on their own.
All right. And for most people, they use sweet potato as an alternative breakfast option. I mean, everyone in Kenya. So what is the economic importance of potatoes in the country, really?
So first is nutritional. They are high, complex carbs, which means they'll stay in the stomach longer, which means you won't have cravings as opposed to eating bread or other more processed and refined sugars. So that's number one. It's that health, and health is a long journey in terms of cost cutting. The more you eat healthier, the more you are saving your savings in the future. So that's number one. Number two is that they are mostly they're hassle free. You just put down the vines, some little rain, and the vines get roots, and eventually those roots become tubers. So they're hassle free. And then number three, there is a lot of value addition that is currently happening with sweet potatoes. We are seeing people making powders that can be added to porridge, which is also a breakfast option. We are also seeing people making chips from them, people adding them to chapatis for street food lovers like myself. Yes.
Okay, so how many sweet potatoes exist, and how many types of sweet potatoes do we have, or we just have one?
There are quite a lot. I think almost more than 40 to 50 varieties. It just depends on the region, because the soil determines whether they become sweet, whether they get what kind of color. It also depends on the mother crop. If the mother crop was a hybrid, which means they have more carotene, like the purple fleshed, we're talking about the orange fleshed, and then the traditional ones that we have had some crossbred with yams in Nigeria. So we have quite a lot. I don't have the exact number, but they are quite many. And also what you get in the market, if you plant, it also adapts to the kind of soil that you plant it into. So it won't be the original version as well.
All right, and then in Kenya, which season is really the best for planting sweet potatoes in order to get maximum yield as a farmer?
Rainy season, always the rainy season, but we're trying to encourage farmers not to rely on rainfall alone and try and go off the curb. That way they have the advantage, the economic advantage of being in the market when there are very few farmers selling. And as we know, if the demand is high and the supply is low, the prices are better for the farmer. So we are encouraging farmers to try drip irrigation, sprinkler irrigation, so that they can be able to have that. The good thing about sweet potatoes is that it's a cover crop. It kind of colonizes and covers your soil. So even if you are irrigating, you won't use as much water as if you are planting something like cabbages or tomatoes.
And really, how is the market of sweet potato in Kenya currently? Because now with the COVID-19 pandemic, how is the sweet potato market in the country?
I would say it's better because the COVID-19 has come to disrupt and show us that we need more foods that will boost our immunity. And one of the ways is going back to our traditional food. And sweet potatoes is some of the foods that we naturally know that our grandmothers fed us. And they're still highly, highly nutritious. So I think sweet potatoes are on the upward curve because people are appreciating more natural foods.
And now let's change gears a bit. What made you want to start a YouTube channel as a farmer? Because many farmers, really, you don't expect many farmers to start that. What made you do that?
Okay, so first of all, I'm an urban farmer. My idea is to try to encourage people to be producers of food wherever they are. When we come to Nairobi and we follow the template of, you go to university, find your desk job, and then the desk job is nowhere to be seen. So you start thinking, what else can I do? So I'm in the middle of Kitengela, pastoralist place where there is no farming at all. But then I'm thinking, my mom had a kitchen garden. I think I should have one too. And then so the idea went on and on. And most of my friends are what we say bontao. They are not from the village. So they would ask me, Wangare, I would also like to have a garden in my house. How do you plant sukuma wiki? And so I would make them small clips and snapshots. And that is how the YouTube channel was born. It's for education. It's free education for all to see how to manage these challenges and best practices on farming as well.
And that is a really good initiative. And what are the challenges to consider now getting into sweet potato farming? Now that you've talked about the planting, the harvesting, what are some of the challenges that a farmer can go through?
The biggest challenge, as I said, is the rodents. those ones can really discourage people, especially places like Wangige and those cool areas where we find the Nairobi food basket is really coming from, because the temperatures are really accommodative all year around. But the problem is they have those moles that come and munch on whatever they're producing. So you would find they're completely discouraged. So that's the number one biggest issue. Number two is variety. If you have the wrong variety, you might end up lacking market because people know what they're choosing for. And then number three is lack of that awareness. People still go for bread as their ideal breakfast, go for pancakes, go for sausages. And we need to debunk that myth of this is better living. Malnutrition is happening in Kenya as well. Even if we are a third world country, we need to create awareness and go back to our roots and say, these are the foods that we're supposed to be eating. So market can be a challenge indeed.
All right. And now what encouragement can you give young people coming up wanting to do their own side jobs from their main jobs as a sweet potato farmer? There's a young person there who wants to start a business on sweet potatoes. What is the advice you can give such a person?
First advice is yes, good. Number two, start action. I'll meet a lot of people who have the desire, who enjoy farming, who would like to start farming one day. And my advice is start, no matter how small. Get 2-3 vines from your neighbor. If you go visiting someone and you find they have these sweet potatoes, borrow them a few vines. They will not say no. And then go try it out. The other thing is, you don't need a farm to farm. For young people, their biggest challenge is, but I don't have land. But we have seen, especially for my project Farmer on Fire, as looking for vertical gardens for people who are in balconies, for people who have very limited spaces and can still farm sweet potatoes, because on the ground you'll just put your vegetables, which is spinach and skuma wiki, and in the bottom of the container, the bucket, the gunia, you can still have sweet potatoes growing inside that vessel. Yes.
All right, thank you so much, Wangari Kuria, for joining us today. You've really made us understand more about sweet potato farming. And thank you so much for coming to the show. And we'll keep on asking you to really encourage us to do this sweet potato farming.
Okay, thank you for having me. Let me go back to the farm now.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, then we'll come back with more innovations and agri-facts. Let's go for a short break.